We'll get going. Thanks for your patience, folks, and really appreciate y'all taking the time to join us. Welcome you all here. I think to get us started in a good way, I am going to hand the mic over to Elder Larry McDermott to begin us with an opening prayer, and then we'll run through some of the items for the session afterwards. But let's start with you, Elder Larry.
Okay, miigwech, Curtis. Yeah, sorry, the Zoom connection wasn't in the calendar link, but we made it. Okay. Kwekwe Kikina, Kwek Hiji Manadu, Luamzi, Indigenous Cause, Makwandotum, Shabbat Abajwan First Nation and Digaba, Chimigwich Nibi, Chimigwich Ishkade Mashomas Gijas, Chimigwich Jojo Aki, Chimigwich Jiniwe Daganuk. To all of creation, we say thank you, Chimigwich, and we accept our responsibilities today to look after the web of life, and in particular, the most vulnerable, those species at risk. Those species at risk who have upheld their responsibility to us, the younger brothers and sisters of creation. They've held up their responsibilities for, in most cases, millions of years. And so we honor them, and we bring our hearts and our minds together in commitment to find ways to be better brothers and sisters, to be better allies with them. And so I honor each and everyone's special gifts today. Every time we come together in circle, we've created a special circle, special circumstances unique to this day. And so we acknowledge our ancestors, which I did in prayer, and we look to future generations, to at least the next 7 generations, and we're mindful of passing on the legacy we've received to them, at least as good as we received it from our ancestors. So with that, I'll light the council fire and turn things back to you, Curtis. Miigwech.
Now, thanks so much, Elder Larry, for being here, for starting us in a good way. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Elder McDermott, and he's always providing tremendous support and guidance in the work that we're doing. So very thankful and appreciative for you being here with us. Just a few notes before we get started, everyone, to let you all know that the session will be taking place in English. But for those of you who would like to listen in French, if you go to the bottom of your screen and click on the globe icon within Zoom, the globe icon at the bottom right, if your preferred language is French, you can select there English and French, and we'll have simultaneous translation provided. If your preferred language for the breakout sessions as well as French, would ask that you please add an asterisk at the start of your name within Zoom as well. If that's not already there, if you need assistance in renaming yourself, please just make a note in the chat and we can support you in doing that. Also note that, and for those of you, if you're able to mute your microphones as well, just to limit background noise. Just would also note that today's dialogue is being recorded for the benefit of all First Nations participants who are unable or who were unable to attend and who may like to participate in future sessions. And with that, just those 2 housekeeping notes. We would like to start just by introducing the team that's made these sessions, Tuesday session and today's session, possible. So if you're able to go to the top right-hand corner in your Zoom screen and select on the view icon and select speaker view rather than gallery view, you'll be able to focus on the host facilitation team, and you should see 5 screens now in front of you. And so we'll go through, I'll introduce myself first, of course. So my name is Curtis Skur. I'm the Director of Environment at the Assembly of First Nations, Mohawk from the Tyinega Nation, Southern Ontario, Mohawks of the Bay Quinte First Nation, Turtle Clan. I'm happy to have you here with us today. And we'll go through and introduce all of the team members as we go. But just quickly, you'll see Eli Enns on there, Zoe Mager, Monica Shore, and Kelly Foxcroft Poirier. All folks of the core team here that have done so much work in the background to make this possible. So really thankful and lift them all up. So with that, I will turn over to Eli for an introduction, and then we'll run through the team really quickly. Over to you, Eli.
Thanks, Curtis, and thank you, Elder Larry McDermott, for opening us up in a good way. Yeah, my name's Eli Enns. I'm from Tlaoquit on the west coast of Vancouver Island on my father's side of my family, and Winnipeg, Manitoba on my mom's side of my family. I co-founded the IISAAK OLAM Foundation with Monica in 2017 to carry on the work of the Indigenous Circle of Experts, or at least my part in that, and for the Pathway to Canada Target 1. So we're focused on knowledge mobilization and capacity development for the protection, promotion, and conservation of biocultural diversity. So we're looking at that intersection between cultural, linguistic diversity and biological diversity, and how those things are interdependent. We have some of our team members here, Zoe, and of course Monica and Kelly supporting. But we also have Art Napoleon on our board of directors from the popular APTN television show Moose Meat and Marmalade. But Art is also a subject knowledge holder himself. Yeah, former chief and hunter, and so we've got Pierre Iachetti also on our board, and we have a circle of advisors, including Dr. John Burrows from the Indigenous Law faculty at the University of Victoria, and many others. So glad to be here and supporting the dialogues for species at risk, and for our part in it, we look forward to taking this opportunity to catalyze our minds and hearts and what needs to be done for the unborn generations to come, and commit to continuing to work with the Assembly of First Nations and all of you towards actually seeing some progress on the land. So yeah, thanks again, and back over to Kelly.
Klama chitranka sishak aksuk histakshila sumaas uhukwa umixu Deb Foxcroft uhukwa nuixu Mike Foxcroft uhukwita nananixu James Oish Jan Gallic Oish Earl Foxcroft. So I just told you my traditional name is Chitranka. It comes to me from outside of my family, from some really dear folks who live in IISAAK, and it means pulling forward with everything you've got, with all of your knowledge. My English name, Mama Nakits MT Kelly Foxcroft Poirier. I'm here in service of witnessing and deep listening for this work. So I will be your graphic recorder for the session, and really honored to bring different modalities other than just the written word. As I know, as Indigenous people, we are story people, and we have always done our most important work and expressed our governance, our constitution, and our values through our stories, songs, beadwork, regalia, and through our artwork. So really pleased to be of deep service today, and to hold up, IISAAK is our word, to holding each other up and living into that value through this work. I look forward to hearing from all of you. Everyone knows something good, and everyone brings some really important pieces of generosity to the center for us all to learn. So True Ushuk Shiklits. Look forward to the time together today. Passing the talking piece to Zoe.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Zoe Mager, and as Eli mentioned, I work with them at IISAAK OLAM. And yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. We'd like to invite everyone who are here today to go ahead and use the chat. Some folks are starting to, but please introduce yourself, let us know where you're coming from. It's a great way to interact with each other, or if you kind of have questions on the spot. Please, yeah, the chat is our way to kind of have that continuous dialogue in Zoom, in our kind of limitation, but it's also wonderful that in using this platform, we can all come together from all different parts of this beautiful land. As well, in today's session, we're going to be sharing some really important context with you. And so we'll be using a couple of polls through a platform called Mentimeter. And we'll also be breaking out into a couple of smaller group discussions. So please feel free to, I've put it in the chat a couple times, but please feel free to contact myself or contact Chris. If you have any, Chris from Encore, who's the tech support, if you have any questions or if you have any tech issues. Yeah, looking forward to our time here together today. And Curtis, over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Zoe. And thank you all for your support in bringing this all together. So happy and grateful to be working with you all on this important dialogue. Zoe mentioned that we are going to be using an interactive platform called Mentimeter, and that's really just to try and give you all an opportunity to input. The goal here today, of course, is not to be writing down everything that we're sharing within the sessions, but rather creating a space where we can listen attentively and share and be open. And we'll use these polls when we return from each of those breakouts to try and capture some of the key pieces that have been discussed throughout the morning and afternoon, sorry. So our first question, actually, just to get us started and become familiar with the Mentimeter platform, our first question is simply, how did you hear about today's dialogue session? The Mentimeter link is going to be provided in the chat. If you click on that, that will take you to the window outside of Zoom. We'll give you just a few minutes to respond to that, and then just ask you all to come back to Zoom, and we'll be able to see some of those responses in real time. So follow that link that Zoe shared. Any issues, let us know in the chat, and we'll give you just a few minutes to respond, and then we'll get going.
Yeah. You're waking? You're waking? You're waking?
All right. So thanks all for jumping on that quick exercise. Really neat, interesting to see that information and those results coming in real time. And I'm sure many of you by now have used or been involved in using this platform, but really interesting, and it adds quite a bit to our conversation. So we'll be looking forward to that after the next couple of breakouts. But a bit about this afternoon, and really wanting to set the stage, create a bit of context for what we're trying to do today while we have you all here sharing your time. Three primary objectives in mind that we've created here. And the first and most important, I think, is the hope of creating a space that doesn't yet exist as it relates to species at risk dialogue and conservation planning, a space for First Nations and for yourselves to share your experiences and information about species at risk with one another, really creating that network, that community of practice, a place where we can learn all about all the great work that's happening from coast to coast to coast in Canada. And so primary objective for today. The second, of course, to share and learn about your approaches and your recommendations as it relates to species at risk, monitoring, management, conservation, and recovery, but certainly not limited to those four areas. I'm really just having you here and sharing with us is the most important piece. And thirdly, gauging your interest in connecting with existing First Nation species at risk networks and initiatives through your participation in this dialogue, as well as other gatherings in the coming months and years. So really, dialogue is exactly that. It's just a space that we can begin to have a conversation with one another today and going forward. So three primary objectives for the afternoon and for these efforts. And then maybe just a bit more from me before I hand it over to Eli, just to give you a little bit more context, sort of how we found ourselves here today and the work that we've been doing at the Assembly of First Nations. So many of you may be aware, in 2019, Canada announced its newfound or newly proposed approach to species at risk conservation planning, which was indicative of a shift from single species to multi-species and ecosystems-based approaches to conservation. That was called and has been referred to as the Pan-Canadian approach to species at risk conservation. Important note, in the development of this Pan-Canadian approach, there has not, in its formal development, there was not an inclusion of Indigenous peoples' voices, concerns. There was not consultation with First Nations or Indigenous people in the creation of that approach. To date, in fact, certainly nothing that has been overly meaningful. And so it's important to note that up front. But the conversation that we're hoping to have today is not to be limited to or limited by that Pan-Canadian approach. This is about how we might inform that approach and prove it, but more importantly, what's important to you, what your priorities are, what you're doing, and how we might do that better together. So in 2019, we received a mandate from Chiefs and Assembly to continue and move forward and support the full and effective participation of First Nations in species at risk conservation planning and decision making. And so that led us to March of 2020, a year ago now, almost to the date, where we held our first AFN National Climate Gathering in Whitehorse, Yukon. And at that session, we were able to hold a 2-hour dialogue session introducing the Pan-Canadian approach and beginning the efforts that we're here continuing today, which was really kind of building awareness and understanding of that newfound approach, that new multi-species approach, but more importantly, interests of those who were able to attend for First Nations and moving forward with this work. Fast forward to today, unfortunately, we no more than finished that gathering. And as we know, the world has significantly changed from that time. And as a result of that, that's delayed some of this work. But we're really here in hopes to pick up where we've left off, to continue that conversation broadly across the country, and to really start with understanding what's important to you and how we might do this. So that's brought us to this point. We've engaged in dialogue and conversation with Environment and Climate Change Canada through the Indigenous Partnerships Initiative to support broad-scale First Nations dialogue on species at risk conservation that is not limited by the Pan-Canadian approach, but tries to, as best we can, create that space that does not exist as yet. And so the hope stemming from these two sessions that have occurred this week is, as we look forward into the next year or two, that we continue these conversations, we continue similar dialogues across the country, likely and hopefully another 4 or 5 in the next few years, to continue this, to build on this momentum, to continue to identify priorities and recommendations that can really help to start reflecting First Nations approaches to conservation planning as it relates to species at risk. So that's our goal. We're really excited about you all joining us here today and to hear from you and learn from you. and really encourage you all throughout the course of the dialogues this afternoon to share, of course, your professional expertise here, but to also enter these conversations knowing that you all have multiple hats, and to really communicate with one another, your peers, to learn from one another. And you can take that hat off and just come to the conversations as human beings with your own personal considerations and perspectives as well. And really just hoping to generate a fulsome and really meaningful dialogue to start us. So just a bit of context there. What we'll do now is I'll look to Eli for our next piece, which is really about naming some of the elephants in the room before we get into the conversation. And talking about how we create space for some of the things that currently exist within this reality, but how we also look to build in a solutions-oriented approach to the dialogue. So with that, back over to Eli to name some of those elephants in the room for us as we move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. In order to be able to get the right solutions, of course, first and foremost, we need to understand the problem and how we got to where we are today. And so we want to acknowledge, the elephants in the room, and this is that our, the state of abundance of biological diversity at the time of first contact, by all accounts, was just unfathomable today. The bison populations, the elk and other caribou populations, the geese, the migratory birds out on the West Coast, the salmon, the whale species and diversity and abundance has all gone down significantly under the governance of a young self-destructive society. Our ancestors had powerful ways of understanding the interconnection of all things and designing human economy that honored Mother Nature's economy, honored the way that Mother Nature organizes herself seasonally and in the great exchange of energy and the cycles of life and death of all things. And this young, immature society in its desire for everlasting life has created so much harm. And our elders have been saying for many generations forewarning these times of crisis. And so we also want to acknowledge that the prophecies, predictions that were made at the time of early contact of our elders that were alive at the time and who observed the behavior of the newcomers, recognizing that they foresaw this, and that the creation of provincial and federal jurisdictions has confused the matter in a variety of ways, leading to negative outcomes for biological diversity and creating the species at risk phenomenon that we're speaking of today. We know, for example, that we have constitutional agencies through Section 35 of the Canada Act of 1982. It is our belief and our position at the IISAAK OLAM Foundation that creates an obligation and a responsibility to manage the natural inheritance that we all have benefited from in a good way for the unborn generations to come. And also that provinces, and this has been recognized by one of our elders and political leaders on many occasions, that provinces may be empowered through constitutional arrangements to have the ability to infringe upon Aboriginal rights, but they do not have the legitimate authority or moral authority in any way to abolish or terminate an Aboriginal right. And through mismanagement of species and with species going extinct, it can be argued successfully, I believe, and many others, that this is this goes beyond the provincial government's realm of infringing upon Aboriginal rights. But I also want to say on this note that my elders have told me that rights are very important, but responsibilities. With Elder Larry McDermott here, who's shared so much about late William Commanda, talking about exercising our rights through taking care of our responsibilities. And what elders have told me is that even if some man-made law creates some trickery of signing documents and such about infringing upon rights and all of this lawyer stuff, what the elder told me is that we can never sign away or abolish through any act of legislation or policy. We can never alienate ourselves from our responsibility to the unborn generations to come. And it is with acknowledging those elephants in the room and also, invoking that guidance from the elders. And I also remember late Elmer Kershane, who spoke about, yes, it's important for us to engage with the Canadian government. And this is exactly what this forum is about. Like Curtis said at the beginning, is about engaging with the Canadian government where they have failed to adequately engage on species at risk considerations. But not only engage them, but also to ensure that we ourselves are making our own plans and that we are taking our own destiny into our own hands regarding species at risk. So I want to end on that note to say, yes, indeed, Canada may be putting forward some opportunities to engage with dialogue and such, but we certainly do support a proactive approach in the vein of taking care of our responsibilities to our relatives, as Larry had spoke, our younger brothers and sisters. We are the younger brothers and sisters in creation. And how do we reciprocate that great gift of life that has been given to us by our plant and animal relatives? So with that note, I look back to Kelly, who will look at the light and look at the great opportunity ahead here. Clicko, clicko, choo.
Oh, Shakshikle, it's Eli. Thank you so much for sharing the strong truths. Our teachings are always to look at and seek wholeness in all the things that we do. So that means looking at both sides, thinking about the spring equinox that we've just experienced and a time of balance, equal light and dark, wanting to shift towards a strength-based approach because we have so much strength. We've inherited a lot of heavy things, it's true, and that is an important truth to stand on. But as we turn our faces towards the light, we also remember the ancestral strengths that are inherent that Eli also spoke about those teachings and those values and the way we move forward in a principled way to shine the light, to create the cracks in the system that the light gets in, as our elder Leonard Cohen talks about. Some examples of the space of some principles that have been growing in us as we've been thinking about our plant and animal relatives and thinking about this important collective lifting up work is that we are in a space of possibility. Curtis talks about the creation, indigenous futurism, the creation and the possibility of a space that does not exist yet for us to step into together. And we are growing community. We are not one and done. This is a start of an important conversation and dialogue that supports our connection, growth, and learning together. Again, we have inherited so much deep ancestral wisdom and can transform and transmute that shadow, those things that we've inherited into light. We can bring them out and look at them in their fullness with truth and with wisdom. And so we're wanting to co-create and hear from you because we know there is so much wisdom in this space about what principles are important to you. Some of the other principles that have come through my teachings that I always like to travel with are things such as we move at the speed of trust. We're here to learn So generosity and reciprocity, we're here to receive, but also to offer and be really generous with our places and spaces of knowing, which are all welcome here. And we're centering the voices of First Nations peoples, communities, and lifeways. So hearing some of the things that we're traveling with, I'd like to hear from you. So we're going to share on a Mentimeter poll a little bit of the principles that are rising up in your heads and hearts, and we can move forward within our hands in this work. Zoe's just placed the Mentimeter link into the chat. If for any reason you cannot access that Mentimeter, please place your responses in the chat about what principles rise up in you and feel important, because we don't want to create barriers to you providing your input. So the Mentimeter chat link is there. Please go take a few minutes to put your wisdom into the center and help us do better together.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelly. We're just going to take maybe 2-3 minutes to allow you all to fill out or participate in the Mentimeter poll, and then we'll come back again as well and carry forward with the conversation.
Thanks, Curtis. Thanks, Zoe, for sharing the results that are coming in as people are going to the link and placing in what principles they are important to add. Respect for all our relations, precautionary principle, humility and knowledge must accompany one another. We do not know all and must always remain with open minds and open hearts. Networking, increased collaboration. Yeah, collaboration over competition. I love that one. Two-eyed seeing with different ways of knowing valued equally. Absolutely. Critical thinking. Healing. Healing is at the center of everything we do, of lifting each other up. We recognize the power inherent in partnerships and alliance and the roles allies have in standing alongside First Nations. Shared decision-making. Meaningful consultation. We're not a check mark to be boxed off in a consultation list. Yeah, no gold star kind of ideas here, just growth. Collaboration. Open to collaboration with former adversaries. Build relationships with partners and the planet. Thank you so much for moving us from human-centric to planet-centric. That's awesome. Different ways of knowing to support new ways of understanding our roles and responsibilities to the natural world and our societies. Respect all knowledge from elders. Thank you so much. That the contributions will continue to come in, and that's such a rich list to expand our hearts and our heads and our thinking, to give us a good start for what do we need to remember to keep at the center with our principles, to help us anchor ourselves and to help us work in a relational worldview together. So thank you for being in good sharing space, and looking forward to the breakout groups of being in good speaking and good listening space and hearing from each of you. Clecco, clecco.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all. Just love seeing those responses in real time. Really helpful for building the conversation, building the dialogues, creating the ideas that we're hoping to generate today. So I appreciate you all in participating. And wonderful to see a few of the themes come up that our elder had started us off in a good way today. Elder Larry with our shared responsibilities, not only our rights, but our shared responsibilities as it relates to species at risk. And we're so lucky to be in the presence of so many of our elders in doing this work. And Elder Paulette Fox, who was to be with us here today, unfortunately couldn't make it, but she shares wisdom every time we conversate with her. But one of the things that comes to mind that really sparked some of this conversation and creating these dialogues was something that she said not that long ago. She said, we don't manage species, we maintain the relationship. And so just that relationality piece that continues to kind of shine through in all these dialogues and really sets us in a good place for this conversation. So offer that to the circle, and appreciate you all again participating in that, in the Mentimeter. We're wanting to shift now, of course, into the dialogue piece of the session, and sort of start to introduce you all to some of your peers that are here that have taken the time to join, and give you a chance to begin to get to know one another a bit better and share your thoughts and experiences on species at risk. So we're going to be placing you all in facilitated breakout groups and giving you time and space to reflect a bit on